When working with athletes, there are so many different things that can influence their training, and it can be really helpful to have a nice visual metaphor to help them to see how those things interact. And here we're going to use the training graphics equalizer to do just that. Now, often what we tend to see when working with athletes is that they increase their training load rather quickly, but they don't quite build the capacity to manage that load quickly enough. Often, as they do this, they make little or no changes to their recovery strategies, and as a result, they're not really giving themselves the recovery needed to cope with this increase in training load. Now, we may, as a result of this, see an increase in fitness in response to that high training load, but the downside is we're also likely to see increases in fatigue levels if the recovery isn't really adequate. Now, because these athletes are working hard, their expectations are often pretty high of what they're going to get out of this kind of training schedule. But the downside is if we've got a high training load without adequate capacity to manage that load and without adequate fitness, after a while we're going to start to see reductions in performance and possibly the development of an injury. So what we might aim to do here then is reduce that training load down to a more manageable level and improve that load capacity by structuring the training so it gradually increases over time and by including some strength and conditioning within the training to improve the tissue's capacity to manage load. We would also encourage the athlete to plan their recovery in the schedule much in the same way as they plan the training itself, and prioritize things like sleep and nutrition to make sure that they're in the best possible shape to recover from and adapt to the training that they're doing. As a result of that, we'd hope to see both an increase in fitness and a reduction in fatigue. And this is likely to have positive effects on performance and hopefully reduce the likelihood of them developing an injury. Now, in athletes, when they present with high training load and inadequate recovery, we need to change what we can change. Now, sometimes it's very difficult to change the training load, so we might look at increasing the capacity through strength and conditioning. Or we might look to increase the recovery if we're not able to change the training load or their capacity to manage that load through other methods. But sometimes when working with athletes, it's difficult and then they're not really prepared to either change their training, to increase the load capacity, to modify their recovery, or to do things that would potentially improve their fitness and fatigue. And in this situation where an athlete's perhaps unable or unwilling to make changes, then the one thing we do have to change is our expectations. And it's likely if they're unwilling or unable to change their training or their recovery, that they may have to expect that their performance will suffer as a result, or that they're a bit more likely to pick up an injury. So hopefully we can provide them with that choice. Make some simple changes to your training, to your recovery, look to improve your fitness and reduce your fatigue, and then you can expect better outcomes in terms of performance and in terms of reducing injury risk. And if you're not prepared to make those changes, then you may have to change your expectations of what you're actually going to get out of your training.